Welcome to Florida Literacy's second virtual conference. A virtual conference was new to all of us last year. We were learning about the mute button and how to turn the video off. We're all pros now, aren't we? So sit back, enjoy the conference. It's all about what you learn to take back to your students. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge our conference sponsors who make this event possible. Our platinum sponsors are Florida Department of Education, Southwest Airlines, Northwest Federal Credit Union, Florida Blue, Kislak Family Foundation, Public Charities. Gold sponsors are Dollar General Literacy Foundation and Wells Fargo. And the bronze sponsor is Data Recognition Corporation. Thank you to each of you. Your support makes this a premier adult literacy event in Florida. We're fortunate today because we have someone from Florida Department of Education. The Florida Department of Education's partnership with Florida Literacy Coalition provides overarching guidance and support for adult literacy throughout the state of Florida. We're honored to have with us today Chancellor Mack of Florida Department of Education's Division of Career and Adult Education. And he's here to tell us what's happening at Florida's Department of Education. May I present to you Chancellor Mack.
Thank you very much, Jan. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Greg, and to everyone at LC for all that you do, and everyone that's involved in joining us this morning, for passion, for your commitment, for your enthusiasm to the cause of literacy and to the cause of education itself, broadly speaking, how much it matters to engage those individuals in high school equivalency, coursework, in basic skills attainment, in whatever it is they may need in order to access a post-secondary education. I am honored again and humbled to be with you this morning. Our internet here in Tallahassee is a bit in and out, so forgive me if my remarks this morning are choppy. Our technology team is currently working on it, but Greg, please intervene if at any point it shuts down. I would like to start by talking about adult education, broadly speaking. We know the state here in Florida, that is to say, the often cited number of around 1.5 to 1.8 million adults in the state of Florida without a high school diploma or its equivalent, out of a population of about 17 million or so. 24 to 34% of that 17 million are barely literate or functioning at the lowest levels of numeracy. Together with the effects of COVID, across the state, engagement or enrollment in adult education and adult general education, adult literacy courses and coursework across the state is down about half. We've lost over 50 to 60,000 adults on average over the past year as a result of the pandemic. And so the situation is not one of crisis, but it's certainly one that should trigger our cause, our concern, and thus then hopefully our enthusiasm to help re-engage, to think about new collaborative partnerships, to think about working with the YMCA or your local chamber or your local nonprofit or church or faith-based organization or community-based organization, the Urban League, whomever. I think it's time now that we think about how to coordinate, how to form regional collaboratives, how to think about partnerships in ways that we've never done before. And so it's toward this end that the Department of Education yesterday, as a matter of fact, posted its new request for proposals for adult education and adult family literacy. The RFP is a multi-year award that seeks to accomplish 4 priorities. The first of which is to promote these regional partnerships to ensure comprehensive approaches to adult learning and to literacy, broadly speaking. So these regional partnerships can take the form of many, can take many different forms, rather. It depends on the region, but what we're looking for is for adult education and adult literacy and literacy providers out there to come together with their local workforce board, to come together and to coalesce with their local post-secondary publication institution, their local Florida college system institution or technical college. A more, I think, dare I say, progressive in the needs of Florida residents, at least in terms of our educational and employability and social mobility outcomes. Priority number 2, we want to expand the talent pipeline through the attainment of credentials of value and the acquisition of post-secondary certifications or industry recognized credentials or degrees. That is to say, we need to stop. We need to move. We need to move beyond the old way of doing adult ed and old way of doing literacy acquisition or skill attainment. That is to say, as to think of that as being done separate and apart from post-secondary credential attainment. We want to move in an integrated way. We want to move to an integrated model, rather, so that everything is done simultaneous with, or concurrently with, or in tandem with a credential of value. So that looks like, for example, perhaps enrollment in automotive tech or search tech or health sciences alongside their adult education or adult general basic education or whatever it is they may need to access post-secondary education and attainment. The truth of the matter is that we want a seamless and integrated system, not just in terms of educational sort of aims and the structure of education itself, but the seamless and integrated system also refers to how we are partnering, again, back to priority number 1, with our local workforce boards and the local workforce development partners in our region, our economic development partners, our chambers, et cetera. This is imagined and envisioned by Speaker Sprowls in the House and House Bill 1507, which is all but signed, sealed, done, and delivered, headed to the governor's desk. And so for those on the call today, I would encourage everyone to take a look at 1507 as it sort of maps out a blueprint development looks like. It is truly integrated in the way that this RFP envisions. And so the RFP, coupled with the aims of 1507, sort of will give everyone a clear picture of where the state of Florida is headed and where the legislature is headed insofar as trying to, again, reimagine how we are conducting and doing and affecting and delivering on our promise to provide access and opportunity for residents. Priority number 3, we want to ensure all learners receive high quality instruction that is aligned to labor market needs and outcomes. So how we are thinking about how our credentials of value and our programs are aligned to employer demand and how we are thinking about how to connect adults to employment. The grant sort of wants to incentivize that kind of activity. The last measure, or rather, sorry, the last priority is priority number 4. How are we going to incent, measure, and support enhanced program effectiveness? So in order to achieve these 4 priorities, we have 4 major tactics. First, we want everyone to conduct a comprehensive regional needs assessment and asset map during the first year of the grant. We want regional collaborative networks to be formed, and we'll talk through sort of the details and the structuring of how that's going to occur and how we want to facilitate that in view of getting more CBOs and nonprofits, and again, urban leagues and WISE involved in the prospect of adult education and adult literacy. We want to develop integrated education and training programs, which again, align adult ed to high quality credentials of value. So we will be very prescriptive in what we want by way of what kind of integrated education and training programs should be available to the public. And we want to advance high levels of academic achievement through a 2-gen approach. Early childhood literacy is a big focus of the legislature. Again, if you haven't been following the legislation there, please do so. So how we are marrying our early childhood literacy attainment goals with, again, our need to re-engage adults across the state of Florida, we're looking to wed the two in view of, or rather by way of, the new request for proposals that's been published. And so for more information on everything that I'm talking about, the website is fldoe.org/WIOA grants, WIOA. So that's www.fldoe.org/WIOA grants. And I'll drop it in the chat so we can share it as the conference continues. We will, on Monday, be hosting 2 webinars, technical funding webinars on the topic, one at 10 a.m. and one at 2 p.m. And then over the next 4 weeks, we will have a litany of phenomenal informational webinars with experts, best practices, folks from CareerSource and the Chamber, et cetera, to talk about the 4 priorities and exactly what we mean and exactly what we're looking for, so as to help everyone understand how this is, again, a priority of the Commissioner, Commissioner Richard Corcoran, and certainly our governor. And so actually on behalf of Commissioner Richard Corcoran, whose leadership has sort of envisioned this, and the governor, whose leadership has sort of envisioned this, and their commitment to adult ed, I want to thank you again for all that you are doing for our residents, day in and day out, often the unsung heroes of the state. But to the extent that we can sort of move together down the route of regionalization and down the route of integrated education and training and down the route of more partnerships with CBOs and nonprofits, I'm excited. And I will commit publicly now to everything that the Florida Department of Education can bring to bear to help make this happen. Please count on it. So thank you to Greg. Again, thank you to everyone. Thank you to Jan. Have a great conference. Looking forward to hearing some of the speakers. It looks like an awesome day ahead of us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chancellor Mack, for bringing those updates, and especially for your kind words about the adult educators. We all appreciate that. And we appreciate you bringing your team. We know we're going to have a lot of them making presentations in the conference, and we look forward to that. So for all of you who this is your first FLC conference, you're in for a treat. The presenters are wonderful. They have very high quality education for you. And a well-known feature of this conference is the Adult Learner Essay Book. This year's book, Live Inspired, has essays and poems from 194 contributing authors from throughout Florida. 2 of the authors are here by video to share their essays. Let's listen to Sherry Flowers and Son Lee.
Is living with a learning disability. I would like to tell you a little about my story, living with a learning disability, and thinking that I was unhelpable. Luckily, I had a loving and supporting family. I never spoke of my learning disability to anybody. When I was younger, my parents would try to talk to me about my learning problems in school, but I would think of ways to escape the talk by faking sick or just leaving the room. I did the same in school when I had to read out loud or test taking. The thought of somebody finding out about my learning disability would be unbearable. My family helped me out by filling out job application. I would keep a low-paying job for long periods of time. They didn't give raises or have health benefits. I searched for jobs that had extra hours and worked twice as hard to make a living. I will always stay under the radar so my disability wouldn't be noticed. Currently, I've been at my job for 20 years and thought my job cared like my family did. I got sick and was out of work for months. During this time, my job frequently checked on me. After a period of time, I returned to work. It was time for me to do my self evaluation. When my boss asked me to complete it the same day, I got very nervous. In the past, I would take the evaluation home and my family would help me complete it. I had just opened up to my family about my disability and I was ready for a change. So I opened up about my learning disability to my boss and we did my evaluation together. We talked about learning programs and I felt relieved opening up. Some time went by, but I didn't see my raise. So I reached out to my boss and she called me to the office to inform me that I didn't get a raise because of my poor paperwork. I started thinking that I shouldn't have opened up. This is what I was hiding from. I was so embarrassed. I told my mother I wanted help now. Shortly after this, I was listening to the radio and they was talking about a program called Literacy for Adults in Brevard. I told my sister and she found a number for me to call. Still embarrassed, I didn't make the call and went back to my old habit of trying to escape. I finally made the call. I went from being nervous and scared to hoping that I could be helped. Meeting with the staff for the first time was very scary, but this would be the best thing I did for myself. When I met with my teacher, I realized she wanted the best for me and she cares. When you have a teacher that cares, you feel it and you start to believe in yourself. I did this program to catch up in life. And now I can say I do all my reading and test taking myself. And now I live to learn for fun.
My name is Chancellor, and I'm a student at Clearview Adult Education Center, and my teacher is Inguna. Today, I would like to read about my essay, Adult Education is a Research Gift. I had never heard the term adult education before moving to the United States. I just thought it was an English learning center for those. You pay for what you learn. That's its own. But after a few months in Clearview Adult Education Center, I realized that I was wrong. It is more than a class. It's a small family with many members you had never met before. After a month of arriving in America, I registered for an English speaker of other language class at Clearview Adult Education Center. The first reason I chose this class was the low price, only $45 for 6 months. I cannot imagine how they can maintain the classes with this tuition. Furthermore, they have 4 to 5 classes per week. It is really amazing. In my country, a developing country, you can spend at least $30 per month with only 2 classes per week if you want to study English with native teachers. Some centers can even cost to $200 per month. But the quality and environment are the most important things that make me feel love for this school. Teachers are always kind with us. I think They should try their best to understand every student in the class because we are English learners with many different accents. They share their knowledge about life, history, education of this country, America. It really means so much to me and other immigrants because we have limited information about the country where we live right now. Moreover, I have classmates from many different countries. I have a new grandmother from Poland. I really respect her when she can arrange her job and come to class at her age. I also have a father from Thailand, and the aunts, uncle, brothers, and sisters are from Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Brazil. I have learned about new countries, new culture from them. They have also shared a lot of knowledge, real experiences from the time when they came to America. They are always willing to give valuable advice when I am concerned about something. It's really hard to find this kind of honest advice from other people who are not my relation. Last but not least, I especially admire the way every teacher and employees at the center treat students. They do not care who you are, how old you are, where you are from. They always respect every person and encourage you in your learning path. In my opinion, adult education is really a perfect place to start for adult immigrants. You will receive more than a normal class, I promise.
Thank you, Sherry and Son. Your courage to learn, your bravery in sharing with us is so admired, and we thank your teachers and tutors at Clearwater Adult. We also want to thank all of the authors, teachers, and tutors who contributed to Live Inspired. If you enjoyed hearing Sherry and Son, you'll want to be sure to attend FLC's annual meeting and Florida Literacy Awards on Thursday, that's tomorrow, at 2:30 p.m. You're all invited to this important meeting. We'll have 4 more authors who will share their essays, and you will learn more about what FLC does when they're not planning a conference. And there will be a drawing. 25 lucky attendees will receive a copy of Live Inspired. Live Inspired is the perfect theme for this conference, not just for our students' lives, but it could be the theme of today's keynote speaker, Brad Meltzer. Brad is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of The Escape Artist, The Inner Circle, and 10 other bestselling thrillers. In addition to his fiction, Brad is one of the only authors to ever have books on the bestseller list for nonfiction, that's History Decoded, advice, it's Heroes for My Son and Heroes for My Daughter, children's books, I Am Amelia Earhart and I Am Abraham Lincoln, and comic books. Justice League of America, which won the prestigious Eisner Award. He is also the host of Brad Meltzer's Lost History on H2 and Brad Meltzer's Decoded on History Channel. The Hollywood Reporter recently put him on the list of Hollywood's 25 most powerful authors. Brad is also responsible for helping to find the missing 9/11 flag that the firefighters raised at Ground Zero, making national news on the 15th anniversary of 9/11. That's quite a resume. I'm not sure when he sleeps. But in addition to all that, there's the YouTube videos. Brad's kindness shines when he personally gifts his book, I Am Jordan, to its real life inspiration, an 8-year-old boy with a stutter named Jordan. And then there's another YouTube video with Barbara Bush. I'm not going to share the details on that one, but to quote Barbara, "You're a nut." Which Brad Meltzer will be speaking today? The prolific author, the kind guy, or the nut? We're about to find out. May I present Brad Meltzer?
Thank you, Jan. I appreciate that. I love any introduction where the beginning is "you're a nut." Mrs. Bush was completely right, because what Jan did not explain to you is we recreated the "I Love Lucy," the Lucille Ball chocolate conveyor belt scene in the First Lady's office to raise money for literacy. And I had to eat 100 chocolates. I felt like I could lift a car when it was done. And I highly recommend you put in Brad Meltzer, Barbara Bush, and chocolate into YouTube, and you will laugh in honor of Mrs. Bush and some work we did for literacy. So let me start by saying the most important thing I'm going to say, and that is to say thank you. Thank you to Greg. Thank you to everyone. Thank you, most important, to you, right? This is what you do change the world, and I'm going to prove it to you, because that's what they asked me to speak about. And I can tell you that a few years ago, I got to read my own obituary. And usually it's pretty hard to read your own obituary because it's hard to read when you're dead. But I got to read mine, and I'm going to tell you what it said. It said, "Brad Meltzer, a versatile Brooklyn-born novelist who spun a childhood passion for comic books and a prosecutor's zeal for research into a string of best-selling thrillers, died yesterday at his home. He was 51 years old." So how'd I get to read my own obituary? A few years ago, I worked to save the house where Superman, the character Superman, was created. I love Superman. And when a reporter for the Wall Street Journal was asking me about it, he said, "You know, Brad, this thing you did with the Superman house, that's going to be in your obituary." And my first thought was, thank you for so clearly contemplating my death. But I was struck by that idea. What's going to be in my obituary? For a year, I couldn't shake it. A year goes by. And I finally go back to the reporter and I say, "Listen, I want to hire you for a project. I want you to write my obituary." And he did exactly that. And you heard what it said, right? That I sell some books and blah, blah, blah. But I was such a narcissist when he sent it back to me that I actually was so obsessed with reading my obituary, I didn't actually read the body of the email. And what I saw in the body of the email was this note, which said, "Hey, Brad, I got called on to another story, so I couldn't finish your obituary." So, and I'm going to show you this. I'm going to share my screen so you can see it. But as I was reading through my own obituary, my obituary ended with these 3 words. Ready? Watch this. He was a. I'm like, what? What was I? Was I good? Was I bad? Did I matter? Did I achieve greatness? What was I? And I know that now many of you are asking that question about yourselves. What are you? And that is what we're going to do here today. That's what the Florida Literacy Coalition asked me to do with all of us today. Is we're not going to talk about our obituaries. That's a depressing topic, but we're going to try and figure out what our legacies are and what's going to be remembered about us. And it's a selfish question, but it's a vital question. And I can tell you that if you want to do it, you got to figure out who will remember you. If you figure out who will remember you, you'll figure out how you're going to be remembered. But I want to challenge you for a moment. And this is so important for all of you who work so hard in literacy. Volunteering is, supporting teaching, of course, mentoring, tutoring, volunteering again, and volunteering some more. And that is, I want to challenge you to separate those things you do for yourself from those things you do for other people. Because first is what you do for yourself, right? It's what your job title is, it's where you went to school. And those will all be in your obituary. But I promise you, when you die, it's one of the last times your job title will ever be mentioned. Your resume fades with you, your job title gone. But those things you do for other people, that's what lasts, because that's your legacy. That's what legacy is, right? It's what endures, it's what lasts, it's your impact on other people. And as I looked at it, I realized that there were 4 types of legacy we all have. And the first is really simple. The first one is your family, right? Your family. I can tell you that I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. When my dad was 39 years old, he lost his job. and he moved here to Florida, and he drove down to Florida. And it was one of those moments where we weren't just scared about money. My dad was never good with money. He had $1,200 to his name. That was his entire savings. But we were scared for our safety. We had no place to live. We had, he had nothing in it, you know, almost nothing in the bank. I had no job, no income. We were terrified. And he tried to make it like it was a fun thing. I was 13 years old, and he tried to make it like it was a game. He called it the do-over of life. He kept calling it the do-over of life. And we moved down here from Brooklyn to Florida. And I was lucky enough to go to, I gave a fake address to go to a better public school than the one that I was zoned for. Not proud of that. That's just what my parents did when I was 13 years old. But because of that, I got a chance to have teachers and mentors who took chances on me. Teachers who taught me my love of history and my love of English and writing, and I'll tell you more about them. But that was what gave me my chance. They were the first ones. I didn't even know what the SAT was. They were like, "You taking the SAT, Brad?" I'm like, "I don't know what the PSAT is, but if you're taking it, I'm taking it." And it was just because I went to a better school that had these teachers who knew I needed help and knew I needed a push. People just like you who changed my life. And so I was lucky enough to go to Michigan, University of Michigan. I graduated with some debt to pay off. And this guy in Boston said to me, "Brad, instead of going to law school next year, why don't you come work for me in Boston?" And he said, "You know what? Come, you'll work for me. If you love it, you stay. If you hate it, you leave with some money in your pocket." I thought, that's a good deal. So I moved all my stuff to Boston. I moved everything to Boston. And the week I got to Boston, my boss left the job. And I thought, oh my gosh, what have I done? I've wrecked my life. I wrecked it. I wrecked my life. And so I did what all of us do in situations where we think we wrecked our lives, what every one of us would do. I know all of you would do. I said, I'm going to write a novel. Right? I know you do that, right? It was just such a silly idea, but I thought everyone has one story in them. I'm going to write my story and take my shot. And my first novel got me 24 rejection letters. There were only 20 publishers at the time. I got 24 rejection letters. That means some people were writing me twice to make sure I got the point. But I said, if they don't like that book, I'm going to write another. And if they don't like that book, I'm going to write another. And I was committed to it. And sure enough, the week after I got my 23rd and 24th rejection letter, I started this novel that was called The 10th Justice. And I submitted that book. And I'll be the first to say I got lucky, right? It takes one person. We all know this, especially in literacy. It takes one person sometimes to change your life. One person, one mentor, one teacher, one person teaching you how to read that can change your life. And I had this one editor who changed my life. Said he's going to publish my book. I said, that's fantastic. I said, well, how are we going to sell? And I got lucky. Again, I'm the first to admit it. But I said, how are we going to sell the books now that you bought them? How do we sell them to other people? And he said, Brad, he said, books are very different than movies. And if you want to sell your book, it's very different than a film. Like if a film, people like George Clooney and they see the George Clooney movie preview and it looks good, they go see the George Clooney movie. But books are very different. And I know all of you know this because you are book experts. But books are sold, he's explained to me, by someone saying, you got to read this book. And it may be a teacher, it may be a librarian, it may be a volunteer like one of you, it may be Oprah Winfrey or someone in a bookstore, but someone saying, you got to read this book. So he said, if you want your books to sell, Brad, one of two things must be true. Either one, you know a lot of people, or two, you know a couple people with really big mouths. Now, let me tell you about my family. My mom passed away a number of years ago, actually 13 years ago, 2 days ago was the 13-year anniversary of my mom dying from breast cancer. And before she passed away, and this is true, I went to the head of sales for Borders Books when Borders was still around. And the head of sales said, guess where your books, Brad, sell more than anywhere else? And I said, I don't know, New York City, 8 million people, just population density, 8 million people in one place. Nope. So Washington, D.C., right? Thrillers set in D.C. Nope. The number one place where my book sold was the Boca Raton, Florida Borders, 1 mile from the furniture store where my mother used to work. That means my mother single-handedly beat 8 million New Yorkers. That is the power of a mom. And if we were in a room together, I'd say, clap it up for every mother out there, all of you out there. That's the power of a strong mother. And my father was really no different. My dad also passed away a number of years ago. We've had a rough couple of years in my house, but I feel very blessed that I had them in my life. And my dad used to go into every bookstore. He'd walk into the Barnes and Noble, and he'd say, yes, I'm here for Brad Meltzer's new book. He's my favorite author. And they're like, Mr. Meltzer, we know he's your son. We know, we got it. And our marketing plan for my books was very simple. We're going to unleash these two people, my mom and my dad, on the universe, and they're going to sell some books. And you know what? It worked. It totally worked. And I got this life, right? This writing life that I never thought I would have. And I thought, that's my legacy. That's it. I got my mom and dad. I got this writing life. I'm going to write these thrillers, and that's my life. And you know what? It's a good life. You can't complain about it. Right? I got the History Channel, you heard, gave me a TV show called Brad Meltzer's Decoded, and then one called Brad Meltzer's Lost History. They're the best titles of all time. Brad Meltzer's Decoded. I said to my wife the other day, honey, what are we having for Brad Meltzer's dinner tonight? Because yesterday we had Brad Meltzer's chicken, and tonight I'd like to have Brad Meltzer's pasta. And she was like, you can go sleep on Brad Meltzer's couch. And if you knew my wife, that's not a joke at all. That is true. But again, it's a good life. I got letters from President Bush and President Clinton in the White House saying they like my novels. President of the United States writing to me. They brought me to the White House to the president's private dining room to go eat privately with them. And not in the big room where everyone eats. Like there were like 12, 15 of us upstairs where the Secret Service can't go. They had this big placard that, you know, tells you exactly where to sit. You don't pick your seats there. And it said Mr. Meltzer, and it was an engraving of the White House. It was like a work of art, this beautiful placard. And my first thought was when I saw the placard, I said, I'm totally stealing that card. And Mrs. Bush leaned over to me and she's like, you know, Brad, all the novices, they all want to steal their cards. And I was like, I know all those novices. And I was like, look, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And then I totally stole my card and got away with it. And I have my card. It's actually sitting right here next to me. But again, it's a good life. If that's my legacy, if that's all I have, I get to bring books to people. It's a good life. Can't ask for anything more. It wasn't until I was working on my 9th book that I finally figured out the next category of legacy we all have. Because my son was born. We had our first child. And I said, you know, I'm someone who loves books and loves reading. I said, I want to write a book for him that lasts his entire life. That one day from the day he's born, I'm going to give him the rules to be a good person. I'll one day present this book to him. He will take the book from me that I wrote for him. He will say, thank you, Father. You are indeed the greatest dad of all time. I had this big parade plan for myself. It was going to be awesome. And the truth was the book was garbage. Because as any of us as parents know, you can't teach your kid to be good by telling him be good. It takes far more than that, just giving them the rules. And a friend of mine, Simon Sinek, told me this amazing story about the Wright brothers. He said every time the Wright brothers will go out to fly their plane, they bring enough extra materials for multiple crashes, which means every time they went out, they knew they would fail. And they would crash and rebuild and crash and rebuild. And that's why they took off. And I love that story. I wanted my sons to hear that story. I wanted my daughter to hear that story. I wanted everyone to know that if you dream big and you work hard and you have a good side order of stubbornness, you can do anything in this world. And I said, that's the book I want to write. Not a book of rules, but a book of heroes. And that's what I did. I wrote this book called Heroes for My Son, filled it with one-page stories of inspiration. The Wright brothers is the first one in there. Just one page of inspiration from Lucille Ball, and you can see Rosa Parks and Anne Frank and Abraham Lincoln, Benjamin Franklin. And then, of course, I had a daughter, so I had to do Heroes for my daughter. But it wasn't until I was working on this book that I realized there was one other person that I wanted to put in there, not just famous people, but especially for this group, I brought this one. And this is true. This is a hero in the book. I wanted to include my 9th grade English teacher, and this is her, Sheila Spicer. This is my 9th grade English teacher. And just in case you're confused, that is not me in 9th grade. I think that's probably 10th grade that I took that picture. If you laughed at that joke, thank you. But that's truly my 9th grade English teacher, Miss Sheila Spicer, from here in South Florida, a local teacher. And I can tell you that Miss Spicer changed my life with 3 words. She said to me, you can write. And I was like, well, everyone can write. And she said, no, you know what you're doing. And she tried to put me in the honors class. I had some sort of conflict. She said, here's what we're going to do. You're going to sit in the corner for the entire year. I want you to ignore everything I do on the blackboard. I want you to do the honors work instead. Ignore every homework assignment I give. Ignore everything I say for a whole year. You're going to do the honors work instead. And what she was really saying to me was, you're going to thank me later. And sure enough, a decade later, when my first book was published, I went back to Miss Spicer's classroom and I knocked on the door and she said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "My name is Brad Meltzer. I wrote this book and it's for you." Handed it to her and she starts crying. And I said, "Why are you crying?" And she said to me, "You know, I was going to retire this year because I didn't think I was having an impact anymore." And I said, "Are you kidding me? You have 30 students. We have one teacher." She had no idea of her impact, no concept of her legacy. And I realized in that exact moment, the second category of legacy we all have, it's not just your family. Your family's obvious, right? But it's also your coworkers, your fellow teachers and volunteers, and all the people who do all the people you work with every single day, all those kids you work with every single day too. Anyone you help, whether it's adult literacy, kids, whatever it might be, they're part of your legacy too. This woman was the most important woman in my professional life and had no concept of her legacy. I remember a few years ago, I went to my high school reunion. This woman, I remember, nice, sweet woman, comes racing up to me. She says, "Brad Meltzer, you know what I remember the most about you?" And I said, "What?" And she says, "We were playing ball in PE one day in gym class, and you threw the ball and I dropped it and you yelled at me." And I said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that I was a jerk on that day to you. I felt this big, but it showed me God knows what we leave behind. I had no idea I did that to her. God knows what we leave behind. And that brings me, especially for this group, the next category of legacy we all have. And it's one that I really, for what you do, and I'll tell you this, in the New York City subway right now, there's a poster that's up there. And it says, "Who will remember your name?" It's a potent question, right? Who will remember your name? We talked about family, we talked about your friends and coworkers, but who will remember you? In inner city Miami, not far from where I'm talking to you from right now, there used to be a soul food restaurant named Jumbo's. Closed a couple of years ago, but it was Jumbo's was back in the 60s, in the 1960s. If you were Black, would not serve you. You had to go around back, you had to go around the side. And when my father-in-law, a man named Bobby Flam, took over the restaurant in the 60s, he said, "These are rules for an uncivilized time. We have to change them." He hired 3 Black employees. On that day, 30 of his white employees quit the job, would not work with anyone who was Black. He said, "That's okay." He became one of the first restaurants in Miami to integrate, won the James Beard Award. There's only 3 restaurants in Miami that have won James Beard American Classic Awards. There's Joe's Stone Crabs, which many people know. There's Versailles, the first Cuban restaurant. And there's my family's restaurant, Jumbo's. And what I love is not that Jumbo's just became a civil rights landmark. What I'm far more proud of is that Jumbo's, when there were race riots in Miami back in the 80s, and there were bricks thrown through every storefront, and everyone attacked all these places and things were lit on fire. I can tell you every place was lit on fire, but nobody touched Jumbo's. Nobody. Because for all those years, Jumbo's looked out for its community. And as a result, the community looked out for it. And that's the third category you all have. It's your impact, not on just your family and friends, but on, or your family, your friends, but on your community. And I tell that for all of you who are supporters of literacy, teachers of literacy, tutors, volunteers, all of you, you all have impacts on your community and you don't even realize it, right? What you do affects your entire community and it pays forward forever. And that leads me to the fourth and final category of legacy that we all have. And this is an important one. And again, I brought it just for you as people who support literacy. Okay, the fourth and final category are, well, let's again, you had your family, you got your friends. If you're really lucky, which you are, you have your community. But let's talk about the impact you're going to have and currently have on complete and utter strangers. In Heroes for My Daughter, one of the people that I put in there is a police officer named Frank Shankwitz. And Frank Shankwitz was had a little motorcycle. He was a motorcycle cop, and he had found a little boy with leukemia who also wanted to be a motorcycle cop. And so they got a little uniform made for the boy. They got him a little toy motorcycle. They had this great day riding together on the motorcycle, and this little course for the boy. And the boy eventually goes into a coma. And police officer Shankwitz goes to the boy's hospital room. He wants to pin little motorcycle wings onto the boy. You can't even make this up. As he's pinning the wings onto the boy wakes up out of his coma and smiles. The boy later goes back into a coma and later dies. But on the way back from the boy's funeral, Police Officer Shankwitz looks at his buddy and he says, you know what? We made that kid really happy for just one day. We should do that for other kids. And that's how the Make-A-Wish Foundation was born. And I know the Make-A-Wish Foundation, I didn't know that story. I never heard that story. But what I love is right now, there are thousands of kids who are the lucky recipients of what Frank Shankwitz built. He has no idea of that. He actually just died a few months ago. He has no idea of their names. They have no idea of his name, but they're forever tied together, forever part of each other's legacy. And the best part of that is we all have some Frank Shankwitz in us, right? For some, it happens when you volunteer with an organization. I love the charity City Year. City Year is a big, we give a lot of our money to City Year to help kids in at-risk schools. Some people, it's when you bring canned goods to your church or your synagogue, or you do a 5K walk for breast cancer or for multiple sclerosis or whatever affects someone in your family. I know, though, that, and again, the reason I brought it up today is your work in literacy that absolutely affects strangers out there, those people that you tutor and work with and help and teach to read and push that literacy out there, whatever it is you do, even if you're just supporting the organization. There are people who are learning to read and they are going out into the world and they are making an impact. And then they affect other people and other people and other people. And they're all those people that get affected, they're never going to know who you are. They're never going to know you're the one who supported that original domino that knocked all the others down. But you are part of their lives and they are part of yours. And you're forever tied together, forever part of each other's legacy. And that is the first answer I promised you today. That's who will remember you. Your family, your friends, your coworkers. If you're lucky, your community, if you're really lucky, which again, I know you are, it's complete and utter strangers. So many out there that you've already affected that are changing the world every day, thanks to you and what you do in literacy. That's the first answer I promised you. That's who's going to remember you. So now let's tackle the harder part. How are you going to be remembered? Because that's the tricky thing about legacies, right? We all have them. Good or bad, you will have a legacy. The only question is, what kind of legacy do you want? It's like when you're little, people say, what do you want to be when you grow up? That's the easy question. The far more important question is, what do you want to be forever? And with that in mind, I want you to think of what your legacy is, and not even what it is, what you want it to be. And I want you to figure that out. I talked about Miss Spicer, my 9th grade English teacher. I want you to think of your Miss Spicer for a moment. Someone who had a real impact on you, someone who gave you your first real job, someone who told you were good at something for the first time, right? Got that person in your head? Those people are giants in your life. But you are now that person. You are on the mountaintop every single day, and your words, encouraging words, good job. You have a real knack for that. Those words are your power. And if you don't use that power, time fades and your power fades with it. But the very best part of that is we can all use that power, right? You don't have to start the Make-A-Wish Foundation to change the world. All you got to do is help one person, be kind to one person, and that's the answer. It is in every story I told you here today. It is my core belief. I believe ordinary people change the world, right? I don't care where you went to school. I don't care how much money you make. That's nonsense to me. I believe in regular people and their ability to affect change in this world. And it's why I believe in my mother and my father and my 9th grade English teacher and a cop with a toy motorcycle and a soul food restaurant named Jumbo's. And it's why I believe in that very first hero that we were talking about today, Superman. The most important part of the story is not Superman. The most important part of the story is Clark Kent. And why? Because we're all Clark Kent and we all know what it's like to be boring and ordinary and wish we could do something incredibly beyond ourselves. I'm going to show you how to do it because I want to tell you how to do that, because I want you to, again, think of Miss Spicer, my 9th grade English teacher. But again, I want you to think of your Miss Spicer. I want you to think of someone who told you were good at something, someone who gave you that first real job, a mentor, a camp counselor, someone who really affected your life in a positive way. You got them in your head? You got it? You got who that person is? I want you to thank them. That's it. That's all I ask. When we're done here and you log out and everything's done, I want you to track them down on Facebook and go say thank you. You won't believe what comes from it. A few years ago, Miss Spicer my English teacher, finally retired. She lasted 12 years after I went back and said thank you. When she said she was going to retire, she lasted 12 more years after my thank you. That woman changed my life. You better believe I was at that retirement party. And she was a giant in my life. But when I got to go say thank you to her, I become the giant to her. So what's the real message as we wrap up here? And I brought something, again, just for you. I never really get to share this, but this is a room of people who do literacy. But I had to take my own advice, not just say thank you, but how do I let that affect me as I think about my legacy going forward? And again, I love my legacy. I love the fact that I get to do these books. I'm going to show you some just so I can get this point across. It'll make more sense. I love, and let's see Miss Spicer one more time because she's the best. I love that I get to write my thrillers like The Escape Artist, right? Thrillers that are, will make you scared and turn the pages and are amazing. This one's about the Army's artist in residence. The Army since World War I has had an actual painter on staff who paints disasters as they happen, whether it's the beaches of Normandy, whether it's 9/11, Vietnam. And I was like, you're telling me everyone's racing in with guns and we have someone who races in with a paintbrush? That's the craziest guy I've ever heard of. I want to meet him. And they said, you mean her? You want to meet her? It's a woman. And she becomes the hero and like my girl with the dragon tattoo and The Escape Artist. And I love that I write these books. I love that I get to do the first conspiracy and the Lincoln Conspiracy nonfiction books about true life. These are for adults, about real secret plots to kill the president, kill George Washington at the start of the Revolutionary War, kill Abraham Lincoln before he was sworn in, not with John Wilkes Booth. This is the first plot to ever kill him that fails. And I love that I get to do these books. In fact, when I never get to tell the story, but when President Bush, we of course know passed away last year, what no one knew is that before he died, they were bringing his favorite authors to come in and read to him. And I was one of the authors selected. And I was in Kennebunkport, Maine. They asked me to come in. And the Secret Service said he's going to be awake for just like 5 minutes. And then he's going to, fall asleep. And I said, I'd be honored to be there. And we knew this was the end. We knew it. It was myself, my wife, President Bush, and his service dog, Sully. And we went in there and I go to read to him. And sure enough, he's asleep. But I bring the chapter from the first conspiracy where George Washington presents the troops with the very first time, has them read the Declaration of Independence. And I get to those words we all know. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. And President Bush's eyes pop open. And I get to the end of the chapter. I say, you want to read another, sir? He's wide awake now. Uh-huh. Because he can't speak. He says, uh-huh. Want to read another? Uh-huh. I get to the end of that one. Another? Uh-huh. Instead of being there for 5 minutes, I'm there for an hour. And I say goodbye to him. One of the most humbling moments. I know I'm never going to see him again. I went to his funeral. One of the most humbling moments. And again, it's a good legacy to have. But what's my legacy? Well, I'm going to show you because I wanted my kids. It was my kids. I knew it was always my kids. I wanted to give my kids better heroes to look up to. Heroes, I was worried they were looking at fame and people on Instagram, reality TV show people and people who are millionaire athletes who are overpaid and thinking that's a hero. I wanted to give my kids heroes of kindness and compassion, teach them how to be better people. And I told my daughter, Amelia Earhart flew across the Atlantic Ocean. She was like, big deal, Dad, everyone flies across the Atlantic. But then I told her this true story. My daughter was not impressed. I told her this true story that when Amelia Earhart was 7 years old, she built a homemade roller coaster in her backyard. Took wooden crates, put roller skating wheels on the bottom, built a homemade roller coaster, came flying down the side, flew through the air, crashed. Said, that was amazing. My daughter was like, tell me that one again. So I said, that's the story I want to tell. So I started doing, and I'll leave you with these. I'm Amelia Earhart. I am Abraham Lincoln, Rosa Parks, Albert Einstein. My son loves sports. I was like, forget millionaire athletes. Meet Jackie Robinson. This is what a real hero looks like. We did I Am Lucille Ball because I wanted my daughter to have a female entertainment hero who wasn't just famous for being thin and pretty. And Lucy stood for the idea it's okay to be different. In fact, it's spectacular to be different. The best part today is that we're all different. We don't celebrate that anymore, but we need to. And we did, these were all for little kids, right? 4 years old to 12 years old. People buy them at birth, but they read them until, my 18-year-old reads them. And we did, an amazing thing happened, and the 2016 election was approaching. As Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton was screaming at each other on TV every night, two of our books started selling more than any others. I Am Martin Luther King Jr. and I Am George Washington. And it wasn't a Democrat or Republican thing. It was a parents and grandparents on both sides were tired of turning on the TV and seeing leaders and seeing politicians when what they wanted to show their kids were leaders. And I love that people now use our books to fight back. and give their kids better heroes to look up to, whether it's Jane Goodall, Jim Henson, Sacagawea, Gandhi, Harriet Tubman, teach people to lead, Neil Armstrong to teach humility. Remember when humility was a great American value? Neil Armstrong was so humble. Billie Jean King, Marie Curie, Walt Disney, Leonardo da Vinci, Benjamin Franklin, and probably the most important one we've ever done, it just came out, is Anne Frank, and our newest, Frida Kahlo. So with that said, this is what I want to leave you with, and I know I'm just going to take the last minute of your time to do this. I want to leave you with my favorite obituary of all time. It's about a man named Susomu Yamaguchi. And Mr. Yamaguchi is on a business trip. And his business trip takes him to a place on August 6, 1945, to a place called Hiroshima. And the first atomic bomb falls from the sky. And he survives. He actually survives. He looks around at the devastation, realizes they can't deal with all the devastation. And he realizes he's got to, go to his hometown. So he races to his hometown, a place called Nagasaki. And 3 days later, on the 9th, the second atomic bomb falls from the sky. He survived that too. To this day, he's the only person who survives both the attacks that the Japanese government officially recognizes as surviving both the attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He says that the good part of what happened to him is that he gets to tell his story and tell people about the benefits of peace. That the good part of what happened to him is every time he shares his story, his life is like a baton. And all those batons, they knit together and they form a raft to help and carry other people. That's a life. But more important, that's a legacy. As for my obituary, he was to me, that's perfect. Because no matter what anyone writes about any of us, it will never capture the best parts of who you are. You don't get to write your own obituary. Someone else will always write. You can try and leave one, but they'll write what they want. But what you get to do is you get to live your life. And you live a good life. You go help one person. You go say thank you. You won't just live a better life. You will live forever. Thank you very much. And thank you all for what you do for literacy.
Well, thank you, Brad, for those inspiring remarks. We really appreciate it. And for your challenge to really get us to think about shaping our own legacy. Hopefully we all have a Miss Spicer in our life. And I know we have a lot of Miss Spicers in adult education. So thanks again. My name is Greg Smith. I'm Executive Director of the Florida Literacy Coalition. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to someone very special to FLC. Over the last decade, the Florida Blue Foundation has been one of our strongest and most dedicated partners at FLC. The cornerstone of that partnership has been their generous support of the Florida Health Literacy Initiative Grants Program. It's my pleasure to introduce to you our friend Heidi Curtis, Director of Community Leadership and Education with Florida Blue. Heidi?
Thank you, Greg, and good morning, everyone. I wasn't expecting to be emotional after the keynote speaker, but that was awesome and kind of a hard act to follow, but I'm really pleased to be here. At Florida Blue and the Florida Blue Foundation, our mission is to help people and communities achieve better health, and it's our vision to be a leading innovator enabling healthy communities, and we have a deep commitment to give back to the communities that we serve. Since 2009, the Florida Literacy Coalition, in partnership with the Florida Blue Foundation, has dispersed nearly $1 million in mini grants to organizations across the state from the Panhandle to the Florida Keys, serving over 20,000 students. These targeted grants promote health literacy by providing health education resources, along with health and family literacy programs, so that students in these programs can make informed choices about their health and nutrition. Through health-related projects that the grantees coordinate, program participants are learning about healthy eating, the importance of exercise, how to deal with general health issues, and the importance of going to the doctor and getting regular health checkups. I would like to thank our past and current grantees for all that your organizations do to promote health literacy. And once again, this year, Florida Blue and the Florida Blue Foundation are proud to partner with the Florida Literacy Coalition and continue our support of the Health Literacy Grant Initiative. I'm pleased to award the following organizations with the 2021 Health Literacy Grant. And if we were in person, I would ask each of you to stand up, but we will clap here virtually. Please join me in congratulating the 2021 Health Literacy Grant recipients. the Adult Learning Center, Osceola, Atlantic Technical College, Collier County Adult Education, El Sol, Flagler Technical Institute, Learn to Read St. Johns County, Leroy Collins, Leon County Public Library System, Literacy Alliance of Northeast Florida, Literacy Council of Sarasota, Miami-Dade College, Pensacola State College, Safe Children Coalition, School District of DeSoto County, United Food Bank of Plant City. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you, Heidi. A brand new partner and one we're very excited about is the Kislak Family Foundation. It's a pleasure to have Deanna Marcus with us today, representing the foundation to make a special announcement. Deanna?
It's a great pleasure for me to attend the Florida Literacy Coalition Conference and to speak on behalf of the Kislak Family Foundation. My connection to the foundation began in 2004 when Jay Kislak donated his fabulous archaeology and history of the early Americas collection to the Library of Congress. The collection consisted of 3,000 individual pieces, including rare books, manuscripts, maps, and archaeological objects. The Library of Congress assembled a permanent exhibit featuring items from the Kislak collection that is one of the highlights of the visitor experience. A provision of Mr. Kislak's gift was the establishment of an advisory committee to oversee the programs, fellowships, and the ongoing exhibition. Those advisory committee meetings put me in touch with members of the Kislak family and the Kislak organization who would oversee the foundation after Jay's death in 2018. The Kislak Family Foundation has as its mission supporting leadership and innovation in the fields of education, arts and humanities, animal welfare, and environmental preservation. In recent months, the board asked me to help identify literacy organizations that are engaged in innovative work because they believe literacy is a foundational building block for an educated and engaged citizenry. The foundation asked me to pay special attention to umbrella organizations that could provide leadership for other literacy organizations. It was with those guidelines that I discovered the great work of the Florida Literacy Coalition. I was thrilled to learn that this work was underway in Jay's home state, and I knew that the Kislak Foundation Board would be pleased as well. Today, it is my pleasure to announce a grant of $100,000 to the Florida Literacy Coalition that will allow it to undertake a series of initiatives. 1, online English conversation and citizenship classes. 2, planning grants to establish community-based family literacy programs. And 3, the Kislak Get Connected Equipment Fund that will distribute tablets and laptops for low-income adult learners who don't have a suitable device to participate in online classes. The Kislak Family Foundation was struck by the study by the National Center for Education Statistics that reports an estimated 24% of adults in Florida perform at the lowest literacy level. Children of less educated parents are much more likely to become low-skilled adults themselves. The foundation believes that the Florida Literacy Coalition is the perfect partner for supporting innovation and leadership in education. Tom Bartelmo, the CEO of the Kislak organization, stated the foundation's aspirations in this way. Through literacy and education, we gain the tools to help ourselves and our families achieve goals and dreams that will enhance our lives. The Kislak Family Foundation is grateful for the work of the Florida Literacy Coalition and the many local organizations throughout the state that make a difference in adult and family literacy. We are proud to be partnering with you, and we wish you great success with these new initiatives. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Deanna. We very much look forward to working with the Kislak Foundation in the future. So we appreciate that very generous support. At this point, I just wanted to thank some folks. When we're organizing a conference like this, it's a real team effort, and we have a lot of people that are involved. We'll start with our planning committee. And here are the folks who are part of our planning committee this year. Thank you very much for all your participation. They provided very valuable advice and support throughout the process, and we very much appreciate it. I also wanted to thank our team, our staff at FLC, and we have a great group of folks, and I'm very fortunate to really have an excellent team that supports our efforts here. Heather Surency, Aisa Hernandez, who designed our conference portal, Susan Chapman, Quinn Dykes, who's our intern from UCF, and Nathaniel Cordero, who's our work study student from Rollins College, and of course, Nicole Caban, who was our education and training coordinator and conference manager extraordinaire. Thank you for all your great work to make this possible and to really make all of our work possible at FLC. I also wanted to thank all of our presenters who've been very generous in giving their time and talents to present what I think is a great slate of sessions that we'll be offering over the next 2.5 days. I want to thank our board as well, and hopefully you've all had a time to take a quick look at the portal. We think it's pretty user-friendly. You can access all the sessions right through the portal, and you can either sign on, a minute or two before the session, or you can register for the sessions ahead of time, and then you'll receive an email on each of the sessions that you've signed up for. We'd encourage you to watch the video on the homepage, the introductory video that'll give you a little bit of a rundown on the portal. And if you have any questions, you can either email us on the contact there, or we actually have a live chat option as well. I want to do a quick shout out for our silent auction. We have some really great items, so please don't miss it. On the portal, you'll see the auction tab, and that closes out on Friday. So we encourage you to make your bids, and all the proceeds go to support FLC and our programs. On the portal also, you'll see a display box with regard to Southwest Airlines Acts of Kindness campaign. This is a national campaign to really encourage folks to be kind and courteous to one another. They've already documented over 400,000 acts of kindness, and they're looking for folks to join the campaign. And as a gesture of kindness, Southwest has provided several gift cards for us, and we'll be doing a drawing and we'll be making the announcement on the recipients for that at the end of the conference. It's certainly difficult to try to emulate what it is to be in person. We really can't do it through a virtual conference, especially with regard to opportunities to talk and interact and network and so forth. But we're trying to do our best, and we encourage you to dialogue through our networking feature in the portal, and also to use this hashtag and share whatever you'd like to share. We're trying to make it as interactive as possible. So with that, we'll close out the session, and our next session starts in a half hour. So I hope you all have a great day. Thank you very much.